All right, committee, welcome. We are live. Welcome to another meeting of House Corporations. Let's go ahead and take the roll, please.
Representative Chadwick, Representative Haroldson, Representative Harshman, Vice Chairman Knapp, Representative Newsom, Representative Ottman, Representative Wiley, Representative Yin, Chairman Olson.
Here. All right, today is Senator Stephen Pappas Day. We have two bills in front of us, both brought by the good senator. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 113, Architect Practice Act Amendments. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. Both of these bills today, I believe, will be fairly quick. They're non-controversial bills. So, delving into the first one, Senate File 113, this bill actually goes into the Practice Act for architects. The board and the architects in the state, represented by the Wyoming chapter of the American Institute of Architects, have been working on tweaking their statute a little bit to make things better for them, and that's all this does. You'll have letters in front of you from AIA Wyoming and also from the National Council of Architecture Registration Boards and CLARB, which is the registration for landscape architects, because the board handles both professions. And so all are in favor of the changes that we're looking at. So with that, can I go through the bill, Mr. Chairman?
Please proceed.
Okay. So if you'll turn to page 2, line 4, when this section of the act was initially written, applicants were seeking approval for the Wyoming board to sit for the professional exam. The current national practice is for applicants to have already completed their examinations through either NCARB, National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, and CLARB, which is the Council of Landscape Architect Registration Boards. So prior to applying, because these applicants are no longer required to obtain state level approval to examine, the board wishes to clarify that the completion of the examination is required to obtain licensure. So you can see we're changing from examination to licensure. Page 2, lines 8 through 17, amends statute 33-4-105B, Romanet 3. The board currently must deny an applicant to the state who does not have an accredited degree or a new graduate that has began testing prior to graduation. Okay, that's the only way. The only way you can get licensed in the state is to have that accredited degree. These individuals can only be licensed in Wyoming either by obtaining what's called a national certificate from the National Council, or by obtaining a licensure in the other state and then having to come here through reciprocity. Because there are now alternate means of obtaining your education, the reason for this change is to allow those alternate methods that the national councils have agreed to also, so Wyoming can accept those, in addition to the normal path, which is an accredited degree. So that's all we're doing, is we're trying to find alternate pathways to licensure. In fact, my father actually did that as well. He was a civil engineer, worked in architecture for many years, and then became an architect. And so we're going back to what we have done in the past. So there's multiple ways people get their education. So that's what that does. So on to page 3, lines 15 through 23. An amendment of the renewal notice required in 33-4-107 specifically is to strike the requirement to make the notification by mail. The board hopes that revisions to this section would allow them to notify licensees of renewal period via an online renewal system and in lieu of mailed notices. Additionally, the board wishes to remove the requirement to mail certified letters prior to the expiration, as it's time-consuming and very costly. I can tell you, architects tend to wait to the last minute to do things. And frankly, 60% of the licenses do not renew within the last 2 weeks. They wait to the last minute. And so the board is forced to send out return certified letters, return receipt requested at nearly $8 a letter. So this would allow a pretty hefty savings in their budget. So that's all that change is doing. And then if we move on to page 4, lines 18 through 23, and then on to page 5, lines 1 through 4. To grant the board authority to use its revenue to contribute to professional continuing education offerings. Okay, so this money that they pay in, remember, this is not state funds. These are all funds that registrants pay in. This will aid the board in ensuring continued competency of its licensees for the protection of the Wyoming consumer. And certainly the profession is behind this. They're paying the fees. They want to be able to, for the board to offer these continuing education offerings. The state of Wyoming requires continuing education of its professional architects. And so this is just one way to do it. And we've done this before. It's not a new concept. The Wyoming Board of Examiners of Optometry was previously granted the same authority, identical language, just a few years ago. So the Board of Architects would also like to be able to do that. So that in a nutshell is the bill. Committee, I stand for questions.
Representative Newsom.
So on the notification, I guess I wonder if that needs a little more clarity or if that is in rule of the board somehow. But if I see you in the hallway and I say, oh, by the way, Stefan, your licensure is almost up, is that considered a notification?
Senator
Well,
Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Newsom. Well, the notification is still going to be made. If you read on lines 15, page 3, and I don't have the engrossed copy in front of me, so but I believe this is what it reads: the board shall notify each registrant at least 2 months prior to the date of expiration. So we removed secretary of the board and by mail at its last known address. So the board still requires the notification. It just says not at its last known address, meaning mailing. And so
Is it by, Senator Pappas, is it by email?
It's
that they do it?
intent to be online by electronic means, but they're required to notify. I don't think it's running into you in the hallway, but I believe that it will all be electronic.
So Senator Pappas, to Representative Newsom's question then, does it hurt if we clarify that the board shall notify each registrant by electronic means?
I don't think we would have if you so choose. I mean,
Okay.
that's
But that,
probably the only other option. I think the board understands that's what has to happen, but if you prefer to put that in statute, I don't think we have an issue. I'll let the board, I believe the board is here. They certainly can. I know Katie Wilson, the president of the board, will be online. She can certainly address that as well.
further questions, committee? All right.
Thank you. I'll
Thank you, Senator Pappas.
step down and let others.
Yep, let's hear from the board. Katie Wilson, that's who's online? Yeah, let's go ahead and let Katie in.
We have staff.
And the staff from the board, you can come on up too as well. We'll take you both at the same time. Welcome, Ms. Wilson.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. I greatly appreciate your time. And I'm happy to speak a bit more about this bill. And I can't stress enough that the intent of this bill is basically trying to better align ourselves with national standards. So nothing is being watered down. in terms of we measure competency for our professionals through examination and experience. That requirement will remain in place. Major part of this bill with allowing alternative paths to licensure is the education piece. Currently, the state of Wyoming requires an accredited degree. And yes, I could go onto my soapbox and talk about the importance of design all day, but the purpose of our board is protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. And by doing this, it would allow, for example, the University of Wyoming is not an accredited program, but we could have Wyoming students start their careers, start earning their credits at UW or one of our community colleges or a trade school. And those credits could then be applied towards their education as they work toward becoming an architect. So again, nothing's being watered down in the competency of our professionals. So I want to make that extremely clear. I also want to make it clear that when we talk about their notifications will be sent out. The key here is the certified mail is just an expense and a hassle. And we want to have open to have other forms of notification. So we are working towards getting an online system. And yes, you're absolutely correct. That is when electronic notifications will be available. At this time, we don't have an online renewal system available. So there will be mailings sent out to let our licensees know that their renewal deadline is approaching. But again, this is escaping the $8 letters that are being sent out right there before the holidays, where often people are out of the office or out of town anyway and not even receiving them. So we want to leave ourselves open to have improved ways of notifying our licensees that it's time. Beyond that, I'm open for questions if I can help clarify any of those or our intent behind why we're approaching you today.
Vice Chairman Knapp?
Thank you. Just one question. Will the renewals be sent out this year before the July 1st, 2023 enacting date?
I'll let Emily, who is our executive director and sitting there before you, answer that question.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Emily Kromba. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Board of Architects and Landscape Architects. And Mr. Chairman and Representative Knapp, no, the notices are typically sent early October as the renewal deadlines are December 31st.
Yes, Representative Newsom.
So on this notification piece, I'm worried about protecting the board and protecting that those notifications were, the proof that those notifications were actually sent, which I believe was the thought behind having certified mail. So I'm hoping that in some way the electronic notification can be documented, not only that you sent it, but that somebody got it. So I don't know that we need to put that in statute, but I do want some assurance that when somebody gets that notification notice, that they have to respond to say, I got it. Thank you.
Ms. Kromba?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Newsom, typically the software options we are seeing, that is something they can do. Because we don't have it to date, I'm hesitant to make any promises.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can have a simple software on an email that tells you when it's opened by the recipient. Just a simple add-on. Senator Pappas?
I believe there is also a grace period that we have. Has that been removed? We used to have a grace period where if you had like 2 weeks if you and not have to present your credentials again. Is that gone?
Ms. Kromba?
And Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Senator, there is not a grace period. Once a license expires December 31st, the person has lost the right to practice in the state of Wyoming. There is an opportunity to seek reissuance of that expired license for up to 3 years by documenting continuing education completion. That person would not be required to retest or document their architectural experience.
Mr. Chairman, now I recall it. That's it. It would, if you let your license expire, basically you'd have to pay the license fee, and then I think there's a penalty fee or expiring. So you don't lose your license. You do lose your license, but it could be just temporarily, and you can get it back without a lot of effort. So anyhow, I don't think it's catastrophic to registrants unless they intended not to relicense and didn't notify the board.
Additional questions for the board, committee? Representative Ottman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi. Okay, first, just a couple kind of generic questions. First off, how many licensures would you estimate that you do every year so that we can look at that? And where my thing is a lot of people, emails get buried. And if it's 2 months earlier, you think, well, I'll do it. And then it's gone out of your mind. So if there would be, I mean, I know we're adults, we're supposed to handle that, but nevertheless, when you're looking at licensure and expiration and forfeiture and fees and penalties. So just that. And then the other thing was with the continuing education, is there curriculum kind of set up for requirements for what that would look like? And then these classes would be provided by the board, like online or in the state, or do the colleges and stuff already have these available that they would just have to sign up for? Thank you.
Ms. Cromba?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Ottman, the board actively licenses 1,543 architects and landscape architects. Half renew in even years, half in odd. So we see about 600 one year, about 700 the next year. Regarding notices, I agree, the Professional Licensing Board office where I work agrees, and as does the board, multiple notices are more beneficial to both staff and the license holder. So we do send out the initial notices, and at present, we send early October the mailed renewal form. And then we give them about a month, and then we send a reminder. And those reminders say, and hey, if you're not going to renew, let us know that too, so we can make sure we're reaching everybody. I then send them weekly at the last several weeks of the renewal period. As Senator Pappas said, this is a very deadline-focused profession, and so they excel with the last-minute reminders. And so I'm not sure if it assures you, because it is not expressly written in the Practice Act, but it is a standard of operation for licensing to send multiple attempts at notifying people that their license is due, because it is a property right and they do have those forfeiture concerns. And I hope that answers your first question. Regarding the continuing education offering, at present, I believe it's most likely to be a partnership with the board and the state associations to offer that continuing ed. It is not something I've seen offered at local schools. I'm hopeful that the wording in the Practice Act would allow more partnerships and those opportunities, but at present, it tends to be the Architect Institute of America Wyoming chapter that's offering CE in the state. Our landscape architect chapter is actually the Colorado chapter. We have about 20 some in-state landscape architects, and they're all in Teton County. So we don't see a lot of movement with that profession in the state. And I hope that answers that.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, so currently there is continuing education going on. So do you see that there's going to be a need for additional and additional and additional? I mean, or if it's primarily these types of courses and that will continue?
Ms. Cromba? Or Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This continuing educations, we've had a requirement for many, many years, and we have many providers. There are a lot of commercial providers. There are a lot of our chapter, our Wyoming chapter of the American Institute of Architects is a provider. And every time we have meetings throughout the year, 2 or 3 chapter meetings, we provide continuing education at those meetings. And so it it requires us to register that particular course with the national AIA. We send in, or actually with the National Council of Architecture Registration Boards, we send in requirements of the class. We tell them what we're going to teach, how we're going to teach it, and how many hours of continuing ed we're seeking. They have to approve it. They send it back with approved, and then we deliver the course. So there's a very structured method of teaching. What we as architects in Wyoming who are paying these fees want to be able to do is be able to tap into the fees we've already paid and be able to take some of those funds and apply them to those classes. You know, a lot of them will require someone from out of state to come in to teach the class. You know, a professor at an architectural school, or somebody knowledgeable in whatever topic is, you know, it's usually a health, safety, and welfare topic. And so we'll bring them in. And so some of these will some of the funds will go to offset their expenses for coming and teaching us the class. So a very structured system. We've been doing it a long time. And actually the association requires many more hours than the state of Wyoming does. So architects are looking to get these hours. The state of Wyoming only requires 8 hours, I believe. Is it 24 now? See, we've changed. But I believe the association, American Institute of Architects, requires 36. 36. Okay, I got that one right. So, thank you.
Vice Chairman Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick question. So just technicality, by October, when you do go to notify, you'll have that capability of online just to match the bill.
Ms. Crumbaugh?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Knapp, my director, Joanne Reed, is sitting here today with us. She's the one in charge of working on the request for proposal that is pending ETS review at present. We're hoping to get it out and in effect by July 1. It's going to cover all 20 boards that the professional licensing office covers. So somebody may be on by October 1. I would be surprised if this board was at that point in time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Pappas.
I think that placing the language that Representative Newsom wanted to place about specifying electronic is probably, now that I think about it, probably not wise, since they haven't gone to that system. And so all we've done is removed the requirement to provide it by mail. So now it just says the board shall notify each registrant. So they can still provide it by mail or electronic. And so when the electronic does come online and proves itself to be able to do it, then they can switch. But they're still going to be doing it by mail, I believe, this year for sure.
Additional questions, committee? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Do we have additional public testimony on this bill? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? It's been moved by Representative Harshman and seconded by Representative Chadwick. Any amendments to page 1 of this bill? Page 2? Amendments to page 3? Amendments to page 4? Amendments on page 5? Any discussion on this bill? Question being called on this bill. Barb, will you please do a roll call vote on Senate File 113, Architect Practice Act Amendments?
Representative Chadwick? Aye. Representative Haroldson? Aye. Representative Harshman? Aye. Vice Chairman Knapp?
Aye.
Representative Newsom? Aye. Representative Ottman?
Aye.
Representative Wiley? Aye. Representative Yin by absentee? Aye. Chairman Olson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Yeah. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 140, Building Code Requirements Refrigerants. Senator Pappas, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's glad to be in front of you again. This is a very simple code change, a change to our codes. just a bit of background. You may or may not know that a lot of the refrigerants have been deemed inappropriate for our environment. And so they've been taken out of service. The folks that build our refrigeration equipment are looking for new refrigerants to be able to use that will meet the environmental, that will be environmental friendly. All this bill does is prohibit any of our codes from using those refrigerants. So if you go on page 2, you'll see that all we're saying is that any refrigerant that's acceptable pursuant to 42 US Code 7671K. The EPA has authorized a certain list of refrigerants out there, and the refrigerants are not in our current code. In the International Building Code, we have codes they come out every 3 years. In the current International Building Code, it's not in there. They're not in there. They will be. ICC, the International Code Council, has stated that it will be in their 2024 code, but it's not in their code now. So all this does is give the manufacturers the assurance that these refrigerants will not be prohibited in Wyoming, so that they'll be reluctant to put it into equipment, new equipment, because old equipment you can still have the old refrigerants in your old equipment. This is only for new equipment. But without that, they're reluctant to bring their equipment into Wyoming, and hence we suffer because then we can't buy that equipment. So this is a fix for the next 2 years until it's into code. So it's a pretty simple bill. Stand for your questions.
Questions for Senator Pappas, Representative Ottman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As things change, sometimes it's phasing one thing out into another. Can you give me an example of equipment and the new refrigerants?
Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Representative Ottman. I can't give you the specific refrigerants. I'm not knowledgeable about them. I do believe we have some industry people here that can speak to that. But as you know, a lot of refrigerants, and I can't give you the numbers, they're bad on the environment. You know, they hurt the ozone layer, and we've taken a lot off the market. And some of them are coming back, and they have different characteristics. And so you can't just like drain it out of a system you already have and then put this refrigerant in. The refrigerant has to be system has to be designed for the refrigerant. And so there are various classes of refrigerants, A and B, and then 1, 2, and 3. They deal with toxicity and they deal with flammability. And so there's many of them out there. I don't have the requisite expertise in the refrigeration industry to tell you anything about the actual refrigerants. And all this bill is saying, we're not going to prohibit the refrigerants that the federal government has allowed, the EPA has allowed. That's all. So I'm sorry I can't give you technical information on the refrigerants.
Representative Harshman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think,
Don't know.
Senator Pappas, you're really talking though about commercial refrigeration, heating. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
Thanks.
all commercial.
okay.
All right. Thank you, Senator Pappas. Public comment. Come on up. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Chris Brzee. I'm Manager of Government Affairs for the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute, or AHRI. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today and convey AHRI's strong support for Senate File 140, sponsored by Senator Pappas, which will provide American manufacturers in the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration industry with the certainty needed to comply with forthcoming federal regulations phasing down the use of HFCs or hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants. We represent more than 330 manufacturers of air conditioning, heating, commercial refrigeration, water heating equipment. Our member companies, some of which do operate facilities here in Wyoming, produce more than 90% of the residential and commercial air conditioning, heating, commercial refrigeration equipment made here in North America. Here in Wyoming, our industry supports more than 1,000 jobs with more than 570,000 jobs nationwide. So as member of the committees may be aware, in December 2020, the American Innovation Manufacturing Act, or AIM Act, was signed into law by President Trump, which directs the US EPA to issue rules that will phase down the use of the current refrigerants, restricting their use in certain applications such as commercial refrigeration, as you heard, chillers, and air conditioning. This allows for the orderly transition to next generation refrigerant technologies, many of which are made here in the US. However, our manufacturers are facing a pressing challenge. Building codes need to be updated this year to remove regulatory barriers to use for the use of substitute refrigerants. Efforts are underway to do so both in Wyoming and across the country, but current timelines for these efforts, as the senator said, are a couple of years out, still about 2 to 3 years, rather than this year. That will be too late for certainty for American manufacturers to bring these products to the market. SF 140 just amends the state building code to allow any substitute refrigerant deemed safe under federal standards to be used in Wyoming. This will eliminate the mismatch of the building code schedule and enable the use of new refrigerants 1 to 2 years earlier, ensuring that there is no regulatory discrimination or disruption for consumers in terms of products available, and making the new products available for sale in the state of Wyoming on the same schedule they will be in other states. In other words, SF 140 is just eliminating a timing barrier without imposing any new regulatory standards. It simply allows for the harmonization with the 2024 ICC model codes, benefiting both consumers and manufacturers here. So thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony on this bill. We strongly support SF 140, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions, committee? All right. Thank you. Jonathan, did you have anything or no?
No, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Additional public comment? We have any other public comment online? Okay. I'll close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? It's been moved by Representative Harshman and seconded by Representative Chadwick. Any amendments to page 1 of this bill? Page 2. All right. Question being called on Senate File 140. It was already moved. You're just so eager. All right. Please have a roll call vote on Senate File 140, Building Code Requirements Refrigerants.
Representative Chadwick. Representative Haroldson. Representative Harshman. Vice Chairman Knapp.
Aye.
Representative Newsom. Representative Ottman.
Aye.
Representative Wiley. Representative Yin, absentee, aye. Chairman Olson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
All right. Representative Wiley, did you want to move the bill? Yeah, thank you. All right. We're adjourned.